The skies over Europa Prime turned red as enemy warships filled the heavens, casting long shadows over Earth's last fortress. Humanity had lost many worlds already, and now this stronghold stood as their final hope. Fear moved through the streets, as civilians hurried into bunkers and soldiers braced for the worst. Above them, massive Karazai ships blocked the stars. The alien fleet was like a storm, silent but deadly. And at the center of it was their greatest weapon commander, Valzyra. She was known across the galaxy, feared by all. Her name was whispered in every war council, and her victories were countless. Some said she had ended 12 wars by standing alone, surrounded by bodies. She wore black armor that shimmered like molten glass, and her weapon pulsed with energy no human could match. Every general on Earth knew her reputation. Every soldier who had faced her had either died or run. But even with the doom hanging above, Earth did not surrender. Deep beneath the ground in a hidden command center, Captain Elias Cross stood over a glowing table, watching enemy movements. His face was hard, scarred by battle, but his eyes showed no fear. His team waited for orders as alarms echoed in the bunker. Outside defense grids powered up, and Earth's remaining warships took to the skies. Elias spoke with calm fire. He knew what was coming. The Karzai didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. But humans had something different. They had a reason to fight families, homes, memories, and they were ready to die protecting them. As the first enemy dropships entered the atmosphere, Elias issued one final order to all units: hold the line at any cost. Above the planet, inside her command vessel, Valzyra stood at the observation window, her long silver hair tied in warrior's fashion. She watched the humans scramble like ants. Her face was calm, unreadable. She had seen this many times before. Yet as she stared down at the burning clouds, something deep inside her shifted. She placed a hand on her chest, as if searching for something, a feeling, a memory. But it passed. She turned to her officers and gave a quiet command to begin the siege. Her soldiers, tall and armored, moved out with precision. The invasion began like thunder. Across the skies, fire rained, cities trembled, walls cracked. Humans fought hard, shooting into the air with everything they had. But the enemy kept coming. Still, Elias refused to retreat. His voice rang through the coms, guiding his forces, calling in strikes, setting traps. He knew their enemy was stronger, but not unbeatable. The humans fought not because they thought they would win, but because they refused to die without. Meaning, in that moment, two powerful figures stood on opposite sides of the battlefield. One was a living weapon, cold and legendary. The other, a stubborn soldier with nothing left to lose. Neither of them knew that the fire between them would not only shape the battle but change the course of two entire species. As the first wave of the Karazai invasion slammed into Europa Prime, the ground shook. But the humans did not fall. They stood in the fire. They fought with all they had. And far above, Valzyra watched through her visor. Her face lit by explosions, as a strange feeling settled in her chest, a pull she couldn't explain. She had come to crush a world. A part of her began to wonder, was there more to this planet than just another conquest? Was there something here worth remembering, or even worth feeling? The war had begun, but something deeper had also awakened, and neither side would leave this battlefield unchanged. Valzyra did not wait behind safety or issue commands from a throne of steel. She led her soldiers herself. When the time came, she dropped from her warship like a burning star, crashing into Earth's battlefield with a force that shattered. The ground beneath her, fire and wind followed her descent, and the air trembled as her armored boots struck the dirt. Her sword was already drawn before the dust cleared, its glowing edge singing through the wind like a deadly song. Behind her came thousands of Karazai warriors, tall, armored, and ruthless, their weapons crackling with alien energy. The sky filled with transport ships, swarms of enemy drones, and flame trails of death falling toward Earth's defenders. Yet in the chaos, one man did not run. Captain Elias Cross watched her arrival from a destroyed skyscraper's rooftop. His scope locked on her as she cut through Earth's best like they were nothing. She moved fast to fast stand. Each strike she delivered brought down tanks, drones, and defensive towers like they were paper. Comes crackled with fear as soldiers recognized her. It's her. The blade of Kara's eye. We can't stop her. Voices whispered through static. Morale dropped, but Elias didn't flinch. Studied her movements. Calm, controlled. She never wasted a strike. She never showed rage. It was pure discipline. But even so, something inside him saw a moment a gap. Not in her defense, but in her eyes. A shadow. Something human. He ordered his team to fall back, not to retreat, but to lure her into a trap. Through ruined streets and crushed buildings, they led her deeper into the city. She followed, slicing through ambushes, dodging missiles, always a step ahead. It seemed impossible, but Elias kept going, drawing her toward a place they had prepared. They reached a dead zone, a crumbled part of the old city where gravlock fields had been hidden beneath the ground. His team fell silent, scattered into cover. She entered the trap zone, her blade glowing red, eyes scanning with cold focus. In a flash, energy nets snapped into place, locking her limbs. Graph fields rose from the ground, anchoring her to the earth. For a moment, just a moment, she was trapped. Elias stepped forward, weapon aimed but finger off the trigger. He stared at her, breathing hard, knowing this might be the only time he would see her face to face and survive. She stood tall, her armor cracked slightly, energy flickering around her. She didn't speak, neither did he. He studied her eyes, searching for anger, for pride, for madness, but he saw none. What he saw made his heart pause. Her eyes weren't cruel, they were tired, lonely, like someone who had carried too much for too long. Slowly, Elias lowered his weapon. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, voice quiet. "What are you really looking for?" She didn't answer. Her blade roared to life, cutting through the energy net like cloth. The grav fields shattered. Under her power, she moved like lightning, but she didn't kill him. She looked at him, only looked, then turned and vanished into the smoke. Her footsteps left scorched earth behind, but his body was untouched.
Ow.
His heart, however, had changed. He saw something in her that didn't belong on a battlefield, something no one expected. And Chevelzira, the conqueror, the unbroken, walked away with a question burning in her chest. Why didn't she strike him down? Why did his words echo louder in her mind than the sounds of war? She had fought for victory her whole life, but something in his eyes had spoken of something greater, something she had forgotten. And now, neither of them would ever see the war the same way again. Velzira sat alone in the command chamber of her flagship. High above the burning skies of Europa Prime, the battle raged below. Her forces pushing deeper into the human cities, but she felt none of the thrill that used to come with victory. Around her, Karzai officers barked reports and updates, cheering the destruction of Earth's defenses, but she barely heard them. Her thoughts were somewhere else, trapped in the silence that had followed her meeting with Captain Elias Cross. She had looked into his eyes, seen the strength, the sorrow, and something deeper than war. That brief moment had struck her harder than any weapon ever had. She stood and walked to the edge of the observation deck, staring down at the shattered surface of the planet. The light of explosions flickered across her face, but she didn't feel proud. She felt empty. Her eyes fell on a small hollow midge, hidden beneath a panel on her gauntlet. It showed a different world, lush, green, peaceful, a place that no longer existed. Her home long before war became her only path. Long before she buried her heart beneath armor and orders. That place had been full of laughter, of music, of love, but it had been taken from her in fire, just like she now brought fire to others. A sharp voice broke through the silence.
Avan,
her second-in-command, entered the chamber with his usual cold confidence. "Commander," he said, "the humans are collapsing. Soon they will fall. We can begin full planetary control." She did not turn. "How many civilians?" she asked. Zervan frowned. "Irrelevant. They are weak. We should crush them before they regroup." Delay is risk. She finally turned to face him. You saw me speak with their leader? He fights not for power, but for people, he believes. In something? Zarvan narrowed his eyes. They are emotional, soft. Their feelings will not save them. But she wasn't so sure. She remembered Elias's voice, his question, his eyes. She had faced hundreds of leaders, and none had left a mark. But this one, this human, had awakened something in her that she had buried for years. She sat again, her fingers tapping slowly on the armrest of her command chair. Is there more than this? She whispered to herself. More than war? More than duty? Gah! Her voice was too quiet for Zarvan to hear clearly, but he sensed the shift in her tone. You grow distracted, Commander, he said sharply. This is not the time for doubt. She looked at him with a calm that chilled the room. I am not distracted. I am remembering. Elsewhere, far below, Ilias watched the sky from a ruined bunker. He had survived the trap. Somehow, she had let him live. That truth haunted him. Why would a warrior like her show mercy? He couldn't stop thinking about her eyes, not the violence, but the sadness hidden within them. She wasn't just a blade. She was a person. And something inside her wanted more than blood. He made a decision. He sent a message through hidden channels using every scrap of tech and encryption he had left. It was a simple message. No threats, no battle plans. Just a few honest words. If you want to know why we fight, meet me, alone. No weapons, no tricks. He didn't know if she would respond. He didn't know if she would even see it. But something in his gut told him she might be listening. Up in orbit, Valezira stared at the message blinking on her screen. For a long time, she said nothing. Her officers watched her closely, but she gave no orders. She simply stared, her expression unreadable. Finally, she stood, closed the message, and turned toward her private chamber. She needed time to think. Not as a commander, not as a warrior, but as something she had almost forgotten, how to be a woman with a heart. One who had once known what peace felt like. For the first time in years, she wanted to feel it again. The galaxy outside burned. But inside her, something far more powerful had begun to flicker, a small, quiet hope. The sun rose slowly over the broken plains outside New Berlin, casting soft light on a field scarred by war. Smoke still rose from the ruins, and the air carried the bitter smell of fire and metal. In this ruined silence, two figures stood facing each other, alone and unarmed. Captain Elias's cross stood beside a shattered statue of Earth's first astronaut, its face burned away by plasma. He wore a worn uniform, dust and blood staining the fabric, but his back was straight and his eyes steady. Across from him stood Valezira, her armor turned off, her face uncovered. The woman known across the stars as the Blade of Karazai stood still, quiet, and for the first time unguarded. They had come by choice. No guards, no ships hovering above, no weapons drawn, just a meeting between two enemies who no longer saw each other as monsters. Elias looked up at the sky, then down at the cracked earth. This world used to look up in hope, he said, his voice quiet. Now it looks up in fear, Valezira said nothing at first. Her gaze wandered to the ruins around them, to the buildings with shattered windows and the homes turned to dust. When she finally spoke, her voice was not sharp, it was soft, almost distant. I once knew a world like this. Green hills, clear skies. I protected it before I became what I am now. Elias turned his head, watching her carefully. What happened to it? She didn't blink. It burned. Just like this one. And when it was gone, I had nothing left but war. He nodded slowly, understanding the weight behind her words. And is war enough? Her eyes flickered, unsure for the first time in years. It has to be, she answered, but the words sounded hollow. It's all I have left. Elias stepped forward, not with challenge, but with something gentler. No, you're still here. That means there's more. You didn't kill me.
At you?
Answered my message. That means something. Valezira looked down at her hands, hands that had held a sword for so long, hands that had taken so many lives. I don't know what I'm looking for anymore, she admitted. But when I stood in front of you, something changed. Laya smiled slightly. Then maybe you're not lost, just searching. They spoke for hours, not as soldier and invader, but as two people who had carried too much for too long. She listened to stories about Earth of love, of family, of hope. He listened to her speak of a once beautiful home, of betrayal and survival, of a heart buried under duty. For the first time, she let her voice break. She let her eyes close. She allowed herself to remember what it felt like to not lead, to not conquer, but simply to be. The wind blew gently across the plain, carrying the distant sound of gunfire. Still echoing somewhere beyond the horizon, but here, between them, it was calm. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Elias stood and looked at her. You're not just a warrior, Velsira, you're a person, and you still have a choice. She looked at him, and something inside her shifted. Her armor didn't feel like strength anymore. It felt like chains. When they parted, no promises were made, no treaties signed. But something deeper had taken root. Not a ceasefire, not yet, but a connection. Spark. She returned to her ship with new thoughts, new doubts, and a strange warmth in her chest. She couldn't name. He returned to his people with a story no one would believe her, meeting with the enemy that didn't end in blood. But he knew something had changed. She wasn't just the enemy anymore. She was someone who had seen too much pain. Someone who might still choose a different path. And maybe, just maybe, the war could end with something more than fire. Maybe it could end with a heart finding its way back to life. While Velsira sat in quiet thought aboard her command ship, far above Earth's broken surface, dark eyes were watching. Zarvan, her second in command, had grown restless. He had seen her change, how she paused in battle, how she met the human alone, how she no longer gave the usual orders with the same fire. To him, it was weakness, a sign that she had forgotten her duty as a Karazai commander. While she studied the stars and thought of peace, he gathered his loyal followers in secret, fueling their anger with whispers that their leader had been softened by human emotion. Then, without her order or knowledge, Zarvan launched a full assault on Earth's cities. Karazai warships lit the skies, their weapons pounding civilian shelters, and firestorms rolled through refugee zones.
Wow.
Screams filled the air, and Earth's defenders, already few in number, could barely hold the line. Velsira was pulled from her thoughts by the alarms. She rushed to the bridge, eyes widening as reports came in. Entire districts were falling, hospitals were hit, and children were dying. Rage exploded in her chest, not against the humans, but against her own.
Ah!
She shouted for the attacks to stop, but Zarvan appeared on her command screen, calm and cold. You hesitated, he said. So I acted. This is how victory is earned. No more meetings. No more weakness.
Ah!
Her voice trembled with fury. You disobeyed me.
Ah!
You've turned this into slaughter. Because you forgot who you are, Zarvan answered. You lost your edge. I saved our honor. With that, the signal cut off. Velsira knew then she had lost control of part of her army. Civil war had begun within her fleet, and Earth was caught in the middle. She gave a single command to her loyal forces: turn back the rogue ships, protect the innocent, and arrest those who followed Zarvan. Her orders split the Karazai ranks in two. Above Earth, ships that once moved in unity turned their weapons on each other. Fire lit the void. Explosions tore through the fleet. Meanwhile, Elias watched in disbelief as the alien invaders began to fight each other. When he saw the rogue ships attacking refugee shelters, he acted. With a handful of pilots and a single cruiser, he led a mission straight into orbit, risking everything to stop the slaughter. He didn't wait for backup. He only knew one thing. Someone had to stop this madness. To his shock, Velsira's voice came through his comms. I'm with you, she said. This wasn't my order. I'm ending it. Her voice held something real: shame, anger, and something else he couldn't name. They joined forces, human and Karazai, flying side by side against the rebels. Their ships cut through chaos, fighting together like they had trained for years. Even though they had only shared one conversation, her ship shielded his. His team cleared a path for her to reach the flagship, the center of Zarvan's command. As they closed in, They both knew the final battle was coming, not between species, but between ideals, between those who wanted endless war and those who dared to hope for something better. The stars burned with fury, but between the fire and wreckage flew two warriors no longer bound by sides. They flew with purpose, with pain, and with something that had begun to grow quietly between them, a strange new trust. Velezira, no longer fought because of orders. Elias no longer fought for revenge. Together, they fought for the future. And as their ships tore through the last line of enemy defenses, they knew the final choice would come not from a throne or a weapon, but from the heart of a warrior who had once lived only for battle, and who now was learning to fight for something more. The battle reached its peak as Elias and Velezira stormed Zarvan's flagship, pushing through fire, smoke, and collapsing metal corridors. The ship shook under their feet, damaged by the fighting outside and the chaos within. Velezira led the charge with her glowing blade cutting down enemy guards, each strike filled with purpose. Beside her, Elias fought with grit and focus, using every move and shot to clear a path forward. The two of them, so different by blood and world, moved as one through the heart of the enemy's power. The deeper they went, the hotter the ship became. Sparks rained from broken lights above. Doors jammed and walls cracked under pressure. Warning alarms blared and red emergency lights flashed across every panel. Zarvan, mad with ambition and anger, had locked himself in the control chamber, wounded but still dangerous. Had triggered the ship's core to overload, planning to destroy everything himself, the ship, and the planet below. "If I cannot lead, I will bury you all," he shouted through the speakers, his voice wild. Velezira growled in fury as she slammed through the final door, stepping into the control room. Svarvan stood at the center, blood on his face, and fire in his eyes, hand on the console. "You betrayed us," he hissed. "You chose the humans. Let feelings cloud your strength." Velezira walked forward, blade drawn, her armor cracked and burning. "No, I remembered who I am. And I remembered that strength without mercy is just cruelty." Zarvan lunged at her, and the two clashed in a brutal fight. Their weapons struck like thunder, sparks flying with each blow. Elias stepped in to help, but Velez shouted, "Go to the core. It's overloading. Stop it before it's too late." Elias hesitated, then ran, following the control path deeper into the ship, while Velezira battled the monsters she once followed. Their fight was quick, violent, and filled with rage. She moved with the force of truth and pain, striking down Zarvan with one final blow to the heart. He fell to the ground, eyes wide in disbelief, dying without glory. She turned, bleeding and gasping, then raced after Elias toward the core. She found him trying to shut it down, typing commands into the cracked panel, sweat pouring down his face. "It's locked," he said. "I can't stop it." Velezira stepped past him and placed her hand on the glowing heart of the machine. Her suit hissed as it absorbed the heat. Her blade, glowing brighter than ever, plunged into the core knot, to destroy it, but to delay the explosion. Energy fought back, burning her armor, ripping at her body. "You have to go," she said through clenched teeth. "Get to the escape pod. Tell them the war is over." Elias shouted back, "I'm not leaving you here." But she turned her head and gave him a small smile. "You gave me something I never thought I'd feel again. Don't let it die here." The walls trembled as the core flared brighter. She screamed as the energy surged, holding the explosion just long enough. Elias, torn between heart and survival, finally obeyed. He ran, heart pounding, body aching, and dove into the nearest pod. The moment the hatch closed, the ship erupted behind him in a wave of fire and light. From the surface of Earth, people looked up and saw the blaze in the sky, thinking she was gone. The warrior who had once brought fear to worlds had chosen to save one. She had not conquered this battlefield. She had given it hope. And far below, Elias stared at the rising sun, knowing that something greater than victory had been born that day in the heart of a warrior who had finally found her reason to fight. The battle reached its peak as Elias and Velez flagged Sarvan's flagship, pushing through fire, smoke, and collapsing metal corridors. The ship shook under their feet, damaged by the fighting outside and the chaos within. Velzira led the charge with her glowing blade cutting down enemy guards, each strike filled with purpose. Beside her, Elias fought with grit and focus, using every move and shot to clear a path forward. The two of them, so different by blood and world, moved as one through the heart of the enemy's power. The deeper they went, the hotter the ship became. Sparks rained from broken lights above. Doors jammed and walls cracked under pressure. Warning alarms blared, and red emergency lights flashed across every panel. Zarvan, mad with ambition and anger, had locked himself in the control chamber, wounded but still dangerous. He had triggered the ship's core to overload, planning to destroy everything himself, the ship and the planet below. "If I cannot lead, I will bury you all," he shouted through the speakers, his voice wild. Velzira growled in fury as she slammed through the final door, stepping into the control room. Zarvan stood at the center, blood on his face, and fire in his eyes, hand on the console. "You betrayed us," he hissed. "You chose the humans. You let feelings cloud your strength." Velzira walked forward, blade drawn, her armor cracked and burning. "No, I remembered who I am, and I remembered that strength without mercy is just cruelty." Zarvan lunged at her, and the two clashed in a brutal fight. Their weapons struck like thunder, sparks flying with each blow. Elias stepped in to help, but Velzira shouted, "Go to the core! It's overloading. Stop it before it's too late." Elias hesitated, then ran, following the control path deeper into the ship, while Velzira battled the monster she once followed. Their fight was quick, violent, and filled with rage. She moved with the force of truth and pain, striking down Zarvan with one final blow to the heart. He fell to the ground, eyes wide in disbelief, dying without glory. She turned, bleeding and gasping, then raced after Elias toward the core. She found him trying to shut it down, typing commands into the cracked panel, sweat pouring down his face. "It's locked," he said. "I can't stop it." Velzira stepped past him and placed her hand on the glowing heart of the machine. Her suit hissed as it absorbed the heat. Her blade, glowing brighter than ever, plunged into the core knot to destroy it, but to delay the explosion.
Okay.
Energy fought back, burning her armor, ripping at her body. "You have to go," she said through clenched teeth. "Get to the escape pod. Tell them the war is over." Elias shouted back, "I'm not leaving you here." But she turned her head and gave him a small smile. "You gave me something I never thought I'd feel again. Don't let it die here." The walls trembled as the core flared brighter. She screamed as the energy surged, holding the explosion just long enough. Elias, torn between heart and survival, finally obeyed. He ran, heart pounding, body aching, and dove into the nearest pod. The moment the hatch closed, the ship erupted behind him in a wave of fire and light. From the surface of Earth, people looked up and saw the blaze in the sky, thinking she was gone. The warrior who had once brought fear to worlds had chosen to save one. She had not conquered this battlefield, she had given it hope. And far below, Elias stared at the rising sun, knowing that something greater than victory had been born that day in the heart of a warrior who had finally found her reason to fight.